You ever heard of a manhole cover being named the center of the universe? I know it sounds like a tourist joke, like something you snap a photo of and move on, but sometimes the best jokes are the doorway down to something dead serious. Because in some Idaho towns, all you have to do is stop for a few minutes and the whole mood shifts. Welcome to Top 10 Creepiest Small Towns in Idaho, where pretty scenery and charming streets come tied to schoolhouse ghosts and a massive nuclear reactor out in the desert. In the next few minutes, you'll understand why in Idaho, the creepiest thing isn't hiding in the woods. It's sitting right in the middle of town, in broad daylight, still waiting for you to look down a second time. Number 10. Sunbeam. You can stand at the overlook on Highway 75 and look down at the Salmon River, and it feels like you are staring at a place that forgot to leave. Sunbeam is not really a town anymore. It is the memory of a town that showed up like a one-year daydream, then vanished the moment the alarm clock rang. But the river still wears the scar. A concrete dam that got punched open, a jagged hole that looks less like engineering and more like the past trying to crawl out, then getting stuck halfway. Here is the weird part. This dam was built in 1910 to feed electricity to mining up the Yankee Fork, right in the canyon above where the Yankee Fork meets the Salmon, about 12 miles downstream of Stanley. It worked for roughly a year, then the mining company collapsed and the dream evaporated. You know that feeling when a big plan dies and nobody cleans up the mess? That is Sunbeam in one sentence. The purpose died young. The structure stayed. If you hike down from the overlook, the sound changes. The river gets louder, the air gets cooler, and the hole in the dam starts looking up like a mouth that never finished its sentence. And that is where the haunting lives, not in ghosts but in consequences that refuse to clock out. For years, the dam blocked salmon trying to move upstream. In 1934, Idaho Fish and Game had the south side blasted open to let fish through, and it still took time for the river to carve a stable path through that wound. Of course, people do what people always do when they see a scar. They tell stories. Some versions stick to the official account, a deliberate act in 1934 to help salmon pass. Other retellings lean campfire dark, whispering that the dam was broken in the night by unknown hands, like the river hired its own cleanup crew. Either way, the result is the same. The hole is still there, still visible, still doing its quiet job of reminding you that temporary projects love to become permanent problems. So here is your choice. Do you keep driving and let this be a roadside curiosity? Or do you walk closer and listen to the water talk through a gap that should not exist? Because Sunbeam is creepy for one simple reason. It is not about what is here. It is about what should have disappeared but did not. And if that thought sits a little too heavy in your chest, good. The next town gets even better at keeping the past on life support. Number 9. Bonanza. You reach Bonanza on the land of the Yankee Fork Loop and you can feel the road change its personality. Part of it is dirt and gravel, and there are no services, which is the travel version of someone quietly taking your phone charger and smiling about it. You are not just driving somewhere, you are driving backward, like the landscape is rewinding an old tape and daring you to listen for the parts that snapped. Visit Idaho Bonanza City was laid out in 1877, and here is the punchline that makes it feel like a stage set in the wilderness. The town never had a mine or a mill inside its own limits, yet it became the hub anyway. That is the creepy charm right there. Civilization got plugged in without a clear reason, and it acted like it belonged. There were businesses, a newspaper, a hotel, and entertainment. Like croquet, baseball, even a little racetrack. You can almost hear the laughter bouncing off the valley walls, like the hills were paid extras. Legends of America. Then two fires came along and pulled the plug, one in 1889, then another in 1897, and the vibe did not slowly fade, it dropped. Merchants moved their lives over to nearby Custer instead of rebuilding, and Bonanza became the place you passed through on your way to somewhere that survived. That is why it feels haunted without needing a single ghost story. It is the suddenness. A social world that was loud, then quiet, like someone hit mute mid-sentence. U.S. Forest Service, Puspwum. Now what does Bonanza leave you with? Not a neat museum, not a comforting plaque that wraps it all up. It leaves objects, a few tumbling structures, old iron stoves that seem to sit outside cabins like they were set down for one quick minute and then everybody forgot what year it was. And it leaves graves on the hillside. Past the guard station there are 2 cemeteries, and farther along there is a place people call Boot Hill, with only a few marked graves, plus enough mystery in the gaps to keep local talk alive. If you stand by the wooden fence with the dry grass shivering in the wind, you get that backwards feeling, like the town site is below you and the silence is above you watching. Legends of America, Plabon. So here is your choice. Do you treat Bonanza like a quick photo stop, or do you walk slowly and let your brain do the uncomfortable math? If a whole town can go from games and sidewalks to stoves and graves because of a couple fires, what else in your life is just one bad season away from vanishing? Keep that thought. The next place on this list is even better at leaving a footprint after the person is gone. Number 8. Custer. Most ghost towns try to scare you with collapse. Custer does the opposite. Custer scares you with good posture. It is almost too intact, like a historical movie set that never heard the word rap. Doors are still on hinges. Rooms still feel like rooms. You do not get the comforting excuse of rubble. You get a town that looks like it is waiting for the cast to return, and that is the part that makes your skin do that quiet little crawl. You reach Custer along Yankee Fork Road in the land of the Yankee Fork Historic Area, and the drive itself feels like a rewind button. The gravel and canyon walls make the outside world feel farther away than it should. Then you arrive and realize the joke is on you. This place is not abandoned in a dramatic way. It is preserved in a patient way, and patience can be creepy when it belongs to a place that does not breathe anymore. In 1896, Custer hit its peak at around 600 people. Not a rumor, not a legend. A real small town with routines, noise, and somebody always running late. And what gets you is how much of that layout still reads clearly. The town had the full kit: a jail, a miners' union hall, a post office, the sort of infrastructure that says, "We are not pretending, we live here." Now it all sits there like an unfinished sentence. The schoolhouse is the sharpest example. It is a museum now, which means you can stand where kids once sat and feel the silence act like a substitute teacher, polite but firm, watching you too closely. And then there is the Empire Saloon, still standing, restored, still playing its role. In summer, it can even offer refreshments, which is funny in the darkest way. You can buy a drink in a saloon where the party already ended a century ago. It is like the building is trying to keep up appearances for someone who is never coming back. Summer tours run from Memorial Day through Labor Day, guided or self-guided, and that irony lands hard. A living person walks you through a place that no longer has living residents, explaining daily life as if the next shift might arrive any minute. Along the walking tour, you also run into the town's memorial markers, including the Johnson graves, tied to a severe avalanche in 1890. You do not need sensational details. The marker alone reminds you this town is not just preserved, it is archived, with a few pages that still feel heavy. So here is your choice. Do you stroll through Custer like it is a cute museum stop, or do you lower your voice without knowing why? Because the creepiest part is not decay. The creepiest part is readiness. A town that still looks prepared for Monday morning, even though Monday never came back. Number 7, Bayhorse. You do not just arrive at Bayhorse. You peel away from the world on purpose. You leave the main road, cross a bridge over the Salmon River, then squeeze onto a dirt track that feels like a quiet agreement you just signed with your own curiosity. No services. No quick exit, just you and the canyon, and the weird little thought that you are choosing isolation the way people choose a horror movie on a Friday night. Then the canyon closes in. Bayhorse sits at the bottom of a narrow, deep cut in the land. over 6,000 feet above sea level, with steep walls rising on both sides like they are trying to keep secrets from the sky. The town is down there, tucked into the shadows, and you can feel the air get sharper, like the place is watching you take each step. And looming over it all is the signature nightmare, the stamp mill site, a tall industrial structure perched up on the hillside above the dirt Main Street, hanging there like a black shoulder over the town's neck. It is not the cute kind of ghost town ruin. It is the skeleton of a machine that used to eat ore every day and spit out wealth, noise, dust, and exhaustion. You look at that building and your brain does the automatic math. If something that big once ran here, people once lived here hard. Bayhorse began as a gold camp around 1864, then it really flared up when a major silver lode was found about a decade later. By 1885, it was busy enough to feel like a real town, around 300 residents, homes, a mill, 3 stores, a hotel, a restaurant, a meat market, a boarding house, and 5 saloons. 5. That is not a quiet little mining outpost. That is a place where someone always had a story and someone else always had a reason to forget it. Before 1900, the mining district pulled more than $10 million in ore, silver, lead, copper, the kind of numbers that make men believe the mountain loves them back. And then fire did what fire always does in towns like this. It erased memory. In 1889, a blaze took out a lot of buildings, and after that, Bayhorse never quite held itself together the same way. The town finally went quiet for good by 1915, but quiet is not the same thing as empty. Because the stamp mill building still stands, solid and intact, and that is the creepiest trick of all. It looks ready to work, but the machinery is gone, like someone came in and carried the soul away, leaving the body upright. You can stand there and imagine the clatter that used to fill the canyon, then realize the only sound now is your own breathing and the wind, and somehow that feels louder. And if you wander toward the cemetery, the unease gets more personal. Some accounts say there are only a few graves left with fencing, but the markers are missing. No names, no dates, just the outline of where a person was supposed to be remembered. It is like the town lost not only its people, but their labels. So here is your choice. Do you take a photo of the mill and call it history, or do you stand still and admit what your gut already knows? Bayhorse is not creepy because it is broken. Bayhorse is creepy because it is still standing, still looming, still shaped like a working life, even after the life got removed. And if that empty shell feels like it is guarding the canyon, keep going. The next place on this list has its own way of letting the past breathe through a crack. Number 6. Silver City. Silver City is the kind of ghost town that still has a pulse, which is honestly the creepiest kind. It is privately owned, still standing proud with around 70 buildings, many held by the descendants of the miners who built this place when the hills were loud with ambition. In the 1880s, it hit a peak that sounds almost ridiculous now, about 2,500 people and around 75 businesses. You do not picture a ghost town with that kind of crowded energy. You picture a town that thought it was forever. And then winter shows up and flips the switch. The county closes the road when conditions get dangerous. Snow piles up 4 to 6 feet. Movement turns into snowmobile territory. There are warnings that basically say, if you ignore this and get stuck, you might get billed for search and rescue and even fined. That is not a spooky whisper. That is a sign that reads like a contract. So here is your question. Do you turn around like a responsible adult, or do you keep going because your curiosity has terrible leadership skills? That seasonal lockout is the signature chill. Silver City does not just fade into ruins. It gets shut down like a stage after the audience leaves. The doors stay, the rooms stay, the streets stay. Then the snow seals it all up and the town becomes a museum nobody can enter, sitting up there in silence, waiting. Not for ghosts. For you, specifically you, to imagine what it sounded like when every window had a light and every saloon had a story. And the cemeteries make sure you do not romanticize it too much. There are 2 main burial grounds, and then there is the third one up Slaughterhouse Gulch with a plain sign that simply says cemetery, It is linked to the Chinese community that once formed a significant share of the town, with some accounts putting it around 21% of the population. Most of those graves were later exhumed and moved, which leaves a strange emptiness. A cemetery with the names removed, a reminder without the bodies. That is not haunted in the Hollywood way. That is haunted in the paperwork way. Then you have the Idaho Hotel, the town's favorite rumor factory. People talk about cold spots in the hallway, a big man in a tux with tails like he never got the memo that the party ended. Children, a woman in white some call Screaming Alice. You do not have to swear any of it is true to feel the effect. You just have to stand there and notice how a place can look so intact, so usable, and still feel like it belongs to another time. And beneath that hotel is the detail that makes it feel like the town has roots. A storage tunnel dug in 1901 that connected the hotel's cellar to a mine tunnel under the street, like the building's insides reach straight into the mountain. So here is your choice. Do you sleep in a town that still looks ready for guests, or do you admit the real creep factor is simpler? Silver City does not scare you with collapse. It scares you with preservation. Then it locks itself every winter like it knows exactly what you came looking for. Number 5, Idaho City. Idaho City is what happens when a town gets famous fast, then learns the hard way that fame comes with receipts. You drive in expecting a cute little historic stop, maybe a boardwalk, maybe a souvenir shop, maybe someone selling fudge, like it is a local personality trait. And you do get the charm, but the charm has teeth. This place blew up because of the Boise Basin Gold Rush in 1862. By 1864, more than 7,000 people were packed into this basin, and at the time it was described as the largest town in the Pacific Northwest. That is not a small town vibe. That is a boom town heartbeat. You can almost picture it. Boots on wooden planks, loud deals, louder opinions, everybody convinced the future is just one more shovel away. Then fire came back again and again like it had an unpaid tab. Between 1865 and 1871, Idaho City burned 4 times, in 1865, 1867, 1868, and 1871. Call it a curse if you want, but it is history, and history can feel like a curse when it repeats. Imagine rebuilding, then smelling smoke, then rebuilding again. Like the town is stuck in a loop it never agreed to join, and that is why Idaho City feels creepy in a way most places cannot fake. It is not just old, it is scarred. The fires pushed the town toward brick buildings and boardwalk-style streets, and today those historic blocks still stand like stitched skin. You can walk past them and feel the weird contradiction. Everything looks sturdy, like it learned discipline, but you know it learned it the hard way. Now let your eyes drift away from the storefronts and up under the pine trees. The Pioneer Cemetery has been used since 1863, and there are roughly 200 markers still standing. That number alone changes the air. You are not walking through a town. You are walking on top of layered memory. And then the silence starts doing its own storytelling. There are sections tied to different communities and groups, and you start noticing something that is not there. The Chinese community was once huge here, with an 1870 count of 1,251 people, more than 45% by some accounts. Yet modern visitors often note the absence of Chinese headstones in the cemetery. Not a loud disappearance, a quiet one, the kind that makes you stare longer than you meant to. And if you wander toward the Boot Hill lore, the mood turns cinematic. A boot hill tucked under the trees, stories about unmarked graves, names that slipped out of the record. Some people even whisper about strange lights, dancing lights, like the town cannot help but leave a signal flare in the dark. So here is your choice. Do you treat Idaho City like a preserved postcard? Or do you admit the truth? The creepiest thing here is not a ghost. It is a pattern. Fire kept coming back and parts of the past did not come back with it. Number 4. Atomic City. You hear the name Atomic City and your brain does a little double take. Atomic City. That sounds like neon, rockets, and a shiny future. with perfect hair and questionable decisions. Then you actually get there, sitting out in Idaho's high desert between Blackfoot and Arco, and the vibe is not future. The vibe is someone left the set behind and never came back for the props. This place used to be called Midway. In 1950, it took the name Atomic City, basically stapling itself to the atomic age like a souvenir sticker you cannot peel off cleanly. And it makes sense because the town sits right on the edge of that vast reactor testing world out in the desert. You are close enough to feel the shadow of it, but far enough that the silence still wins. Here is where the creep factor turns smart instead of loud. Atomic City is not haunted by creaky floorboards, it is haunted by context. The Cold War era did not just bring science, it brought a background hum of fear. The kind that makes ordinary places feel like they might become important for all the wrong reasons. People worried that reactor testing out here could make the area a target if the world ever went from tense to terrible. You can stand on a flat stretch of road and feel that old anxiety like static in the air. And then there is the date that keeps getting repeated like a warning label. January 3rd, 1961. A serious reactor accident out in the Idaho Desert Testing Complex. You do not have to know every technical detail to feel what that does to a place's reputation. Once a moment like that happens nearby, it becomes a ghost story made of paperwork, headlines, and the kind of silence people use when they do not want to say the scary part out loud. Atomic City itself looks like it is holding its breath. A desert town that feels like a Western film, buildings spaced out, a lot of doors closed, a lot of windows that do not look back. Some descriptions say there is basically one main business left, a bar that also functions like a tiny store, the kind of place where you can buy a drink and a few necessities and pretend that counts as town life. It is practical. It is also a little sad. Like civilization got unplugged, but the extension cord is still lying there. So here is your choice. Do you laugh at the name and keep driving, or do you slow down and admit it? A place called Atomic City does not have to do anything spooky. The name does it for them. It plants a story in your head, then the desert takes over and finishes the sentence. Number 3, Burke. Burke does not feel like a town. Burke feels like a town got squeezed in a vise and the mountains refuse to let go. You roll into Burke Canyon and the first thing you notice is not a building, it is the space, or the lack of it. The whole place stretches about 3/4 of a mile long, and at its tightest it is only a little over 300 feet wide. That is not a neighborhood. That is a crack in the earth that someone looked at and said, yes, let's build a community here, because apparently humans will put a town anywhere if the ground promises money. And when you live inside a crack, everything has to behave differently. Burke had so little room that the railroad once ran right through the middle of town. Not near the town, not outside the town, through it. Like the canyon was a machine slot and the town was the thin strip of human life that dared to exist along the gears. Imagine trying to walk down your main street while a train is basically using your town as a hallway. Now add the Tiger Hotel, because Burke did not stop at weird. It committed. The Tiger Hotel was a 3-story wooden frame building with around 150 rooms, and it was built right over the South Fork of the Coeur d'Alene River. Yes, over the water. And because Burke apparently believed in maximum efficiency and minimum sanity, the Northern Pacific Rail line ran straight through the hotel's lobby. Not beside it, not behind it. Through the center like the building was designed to inhale trains. Picture yourself checking in. You step into the lobby and instead of hearing a polite piano or the soft clink of glasses, you hear steel and vibration. Like the building has a heartbeat that is not its own. Sleep in a room and it is not just the wind outside. It is the sensation of something heavy moving through the guts of the place. As if the hotel is not shelter, it is a tunnel wearing furniture. And that is the signature creep of Burke. It is not about decay, it is about compression. A town forced into a narrow canyon where the railroad did not just pass by, it dominated the center line of daily life. A hotel that was not just near the tracks, but pierced by them, like the town was built on top of something that never agreed to disappear. The mountains did not leave room for comfort, so the town made a deal with machinery instead. So here is your choice. Do you look at Burke and call it quirky history, or do you feel that little pinch in your chest when you realize how thin the line is between a town and a trap? Because if you can build a place where trains used to cut through your front door, what else can you build that you cannot ever fully control? Number 2. Albion. Albion is small enough to blink past on a highway, and that is exactly why it feels wrong when you realize what it's carrying. This town has a population in the low hundreds, the kind of place where everybody can recognize your truck before you even park it. And right there, like a secret too large for the room, sits an old teacher training campus with multiple historic buildings, long corridors, and the kind of quiet that doesn't feel empty. It feels occupied. The story starts clean and official, which is always the best setup for something that later goes sideways. Albion State Normal School was established by state law on March 7, 1893. It opened in 1894 with 26 students, training teachers for Idaho when the state still felt like it was being stitched together. It changed names in 1947, then closed in 1951. Later, the campus got a second life for a while under a Christian college that opened in the late 1950s and shut down by the end of the 1960s. After that, the lights went out for good and the roomers moved in like they had been waiting in the parking lot. Because once a school closes, the building does not stop being a school in your imagination. Classrooms still feel like classrooms. Halls still feel like they are supposed to lead you somewhere important. And when there is no one there, your brain tries to fill the job openings. That is where Albion gets you. People talk about disembodied voices, the kind that sound like they are coming from just around the corner until you turn and find nothing. They talk about ghostly animals, which is somehow worse because it makes the place feel playful and predatory at the same time. And then there is the recurring figure, the dark-haired woman, showing up in different buildings like a glitch that refuses to get patched. Now layer in the detail that makes the campus feel like it has a second body. Underground tunnel rumors. Locals talk about tunnels connecting buildings, which means every time you walk a hallway, part of your brain wonders what is underneath your feet. A hidden layer, a basement for the whole campus. Even if you never see an entrance, the idea changes how you move. You start stepping like the floor might answer back. And here is the part that feels almost sarcastic. Around Halloween, people don't just whisper about the campus. They turn it into an event. Haunted attractions have used multiple buildings, filling them with actors and jump scares, guiding visitors through corridors and what they call tunnels, making it feel like the campus has endless rooms. You walk through one door, then another, and suddenly you are not sure if you are in a school or inside somebody's memory of a school. So here is your choice. Do you see Albion as a harmless old campus with spooky marketing, or do you admit the truth? The creep factor is structural, a tiny community holding a campus that feels too big, too quiet, too ready. And once you have that thought, the next town on this list is going to feel like it was built to trap it. Number 1. Wallace. Wallace is not a ghost town that died. Wallace is a ghost town that learned how to breathe. You walk down the street and everything looks normal enough. Storefronts, brick buildings, people grabbing coffee, the whole small town postcard vibe. Then you look down and realize the creepiest landmark is not a cemetery or a mine shaft. It is a manhole cover. Right in the street, Wallace points to a sewer lid and says, with a straight face, "This is the center of the universe." The town declared it in 2004, and the center is literally that circular piece of metal on the pavement. You cannot make this up. It is funny, sure, but it is also weird in a ritual way, like a secret handshake hiding in plain sight. And the lid is stamped with a miner and a set of old initials tied to the mining world, which means even Wallace's joke still smells like the underground. So let me ask you, if the most unsettling spot in town is a manhole cover in broad daylight, are you still confident this place is normal? Then you turn a corner and Wallace hits you with a different kind of chill. A former brothel turned museum that was frozen in time in 1988, like somebody pressed pause and walked away. The rooms are still rooms. The hallway still feels like it expects footsteps. The details sit there with that museum quiet that feels too careful, too preserved, too polite. It is not decay that gets you. It is readiness. A place that looks like it could reopen tomorrow even though the moment it belongs to has been gone for decades. And here is the part that makes Wallace a living ghost town instead of a spooky rumor. The community leans into it so hard they throw a whole paranormal festival. In 2025, the town hosted the Wallace Paranormal Festival with haunted tours, lectures, vendors, tarot, the full menu. Ghost hunting is not an accident here. It is a ticketed activity. People do not just tell stories. People buy admission to step into the story and see if the story steps back. One hotel in particular gets talked about like a celebrity that never leaves town. Ghost hunts inside the Jameson Hotel have reportedly sold out in seconds, and organizers have bragged that demand ran around 600% higher than capacity. That is not just curiosity. That is hunger. You start wondering what people are really chasing. A spirit, a thrill, or proof that the past still has its hands on the doorknob. And if you want the kind of darkness that feels older than marketing, Wallace has that too. A few minutes away is the Pulaski Tunnel Trail, leading to the Nicholson Mine Tunnel where Ed Pulaski sheltered his crew during the Great 1910 Fire and saved most of them. Just the idea alone is enough, crawling into a mine tunnel to stay alive. Rock over your head, smoke outside, darkness as shelter. So here is your choice. Do you laugh at Wallace and call it charming, or do you admit the truth? In this town, the creepy stuff is not hidden. It is centered. It is celebrated. It is right there under your feet, smiling up at you from a manhole cover, like the universe has been watching you the whole time. Tonight's list wasn't really about ghosts. It was about leftovers. Towns that look normal until you notice what's missing, what's sealed up for winter, what's preserved too perfectly, what's still standing when it should have faded. Idaho has this quiet talent for making history feel close enough to touch, and just far enough to make you second-guess your own footsteps. Now I want to hear from you. Which town on this countdown felt the creepiest to you and why? Was it the locked-up silence, the tunnels, the fires, or that "this place is waiting" feeling? If you've been to any of these spots, drop your story in the comments. And if you know an Idaho town that deserves a spot on a future list, tell me its name so I can dig into it next. If you enjoyed this kind of dark travel storytelling, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next trip into the shadows.